Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris the High Guy Jacobs, and we're jumping right into the action of Archipelago Raid for February. Well, this will be the 3rd to the 9th. This is a very special Archipelago Raid for GrOp. As you'll notice throughout the recording, you might notice some names that you'll have recognized before in the names of Nom Nom, MP5, and OnlyFans. These are 3 all-stars who are joining us from HNB to slum it with us here in GrOp and give us a little bit of a first-hand experience on what it's like to play with the big leagues. And I'll be honest, these guys are probably some of the most, I don't want to say the nicest guys that I've played with, but they were absolutely some of the most supportive team players, teammates that I've had the privilege of working with. They came in specifically not trying to take over, but specifically trying to help out and support. And I'll tell you one thing, man, did they ever do that. They were influential in fights. They were influential in skirmishes, in capturing cement. Heck, I've got MP5 on his own. I've, inside the same AR on his own. Fighting 20 different, marches on his own just to be able to capture cement. So these guys were absolutely insane, and it totally gave us something else to strive for in the Doomsday game. But as you'll see, we are already into day 1. Right after the gate, your first thing you're going to want to try to do is capture some of that cement and fight some of the troops. You're both going to be, depending on obviously how the matchmaking works, you're going to find yourself either vying for the same resources or getting yourself a free walk. In our situation, we are fighting for resources, trying to take the fight directly to Jade from our position in Azure. Unfortunately, here at the beginning, I do get burnt out early, just a couple of marches because the guys are a little bit stronger than me, but that's what happens when you got HNB on your back. They end up bringing up the rankings. We ended up making it into G25, which, for those who don't know, is the absolute tippy top of the fearless matchmaking. So we didn't make it into elite, which is exactly where we wanted to be, but it still gave us really good competition, especially when you look at our opponents and some of the ones that we were dealing with. They were absolutely fantastic to deal with. The only problem we faced inside of this entire Archipelago Raid was that the matchmaking itself left us with an alliance or a legion, that did not either communicate, didn't participate, or spent their entire time farming, because literally for the first 3 days they did nothing. As you'll see inside of this video as well, they weren't able to pretty much push against Crimson, which left us super underhanded coming into into phase 2. Now, like I mentioned, this is a 2-part video, just because there was approximately 7 hours of footage to cut down, and coming from including 6 hours on its own in a skirmish just on the last day before the end of AR. So lots and lots of fights to go through, lots of back and forth as I'm looking out and checking out the map to see what the enemies are doing, killing zombies, but as you'll see, having some help from the HNB guys as we start to build out. Now, there are some concepts and some thought processes, that I might be a little bit new on. In my opinion, it's always going to be best to build out both directions on your archipelago to capture both gates, simply because you do want to have that passive cement generation happening and accruing. Okay. Now, as we've done here, we've managed to clear out some of the cement from the armored scavengers, and now we're moving over to the East Bay rebels and things like that around the 8 and around the 7s. These are going to drop curios for you if you didn't know that before. They're going to drop buffs and curios that you're going to want to use, whether it's healing or training or attack buffs, HP buffs, speed, travel speed buffs, you name it. You're going to find those here in those curios. So don't forget about those elite scavengers and making sure that you have those all taken care of, okay? Scavengers, you do want to make sure that you're going in a group, because unfortunately, if you don't go in a group, or if you're tier 5 or tier 4, you can end up losing those troops in the process. Here, I accidentally I accidentally attack one of our Legion ally members, and then rectify that issue quite quickly and start killing them with him instead. Now we got MP5 coming in to help as well with his dragons. He's got a massive amount of skins that you would see walking around on the map. And it was great to see him kind of going out and flexing with them, putting out different ones all the time. So you couldn't really tell which ones he would have on the field, but it was always a fun aspect to watch him out in the field just mobbing things on his own. Just an absolute machine. So special shout out to MP5. Homie, you are an absolute monster. Don't ever think otherwise, okay? So that's just one of the things I wanted to say, just because obviously these guys were a huge help. Nom Nom's, an absolute machine in himself, an absolute all-star. We had lots of good conversations on how things would play out, and he was super supportive and on kind of allowing us to do our own thing and helping with that. So again, just a huge shout out to the HNB guys. We wouldn't have had near as much fun or been able to be nearly as influential if it wasn't for you guys. Now, what we are starting to do, though, if you'll notice, we are setting up for the elite scavengers. These are the elite, the elite scavengers. Pardon me. These are the ones that drop 2,000 cement, I think they actually drop 6,000 cement, 3,000 cement, or 2,000 cement bundles. Now, for those who don't know, when you are in possession of cement, above 10 cement, you start getting debuffed, both in speed and damage dealt. So when you get up to 2,000 cement that you're carrying, or 4,000 cement that you're carrying, or 6,000 cement that you're carrying, not only are you slower in battle, a ton slower in battle, but you are also in a situation where you're taking more damage. So for those taking cement, especially from the elite scavengers, number one, leave it to the faster players. Leave it to those who are riders. Don't try to take it if you're ranged, and don't just try to take it because you need it. I understand the drive to picking up 2,000 cement and walking it back, but remember, it's only as valuable as it is when you get it back. If you can't get it back, there's no sense in having it. So make sure that you're cautious and aware of who captures cement, so that you always have that kind of cautious and so that you're always relevant in regards to making sure you get that cement back. Now, as you'll see, I'm kind of going back and forth to see what, who else is amassing troops, because we are only 29 minutes at this point away from elite scavengers. So this is typically when you want to start sending marches if you're not going to airdrop, or at least getting people to start massing troops, because ideally, like I said, these elite scavengers are so important for cement, and they only come twice a day. So you want to make sure that you're readily available for them, and make sure that you are meeting up in troops. So you've got, in our situation, we had 7 alliances in our legion. So we're anticipating as many troops, obviously, as you can have, in the 30s, 40s, 50 marches type thing. Now, as you can see, we've cut down time because a lot of what we spent here was just waiting for troops. So we cut down a lot of that, so you guys didn't have to sit and watch that. But as you can see, we're starting to amass a decent amount. So is Crimson, and so is Jade, however. So we are kind of at a disadvantage, and we're also noticing that gold is not there either. So we're kind of in a situation where we're going to have to end up fighting 2v1, whilst basically splitting up our force. So we decided and split it up in a way that the tier 6s would take on the fight and the tier 5s would focus on the zombies. And as you'll see here, it actually works pretty well in our benefit as we take the fight pretty much directly to them. The only problem is they have 2 legions to our 1, which makes it pretty difficult for us to be able to fight through. Okay. MP5 here helping me out with some advice, obviously giving me some tips, things that we were kind of contemplating on how to deal with it. And then again, just following suit. When the call was made, they ended up, doing really well in supporting and not coming in and trying to control. So, thanks a lot for that amount, or for that effort. It was really, really kind of beneficial for us because it gave us the capability of learning our own, learning our own bumps and grinds. So let's see. Yep. So now I'm still checking on them. Notice that nobody else is building out side to side. This is, in my opinion, so this is my logic behind it. Your towers are the cheapest at the beginning, right? So if you put your cheapest towers at the beginning, and then you're starting to generate more cement for those top teams that need it, it's almost like it's better to do it as early as possible versus when your towers are more expensive, and then you're not getting near the value of the passive cement. Because the passive cement on those gates is a lot lower than what the cement is on the other gates or the other level 6s, right? Because they're the first ones. So you want to get them as quick as possible. Now, taking a step out of that, we have moved into the fights here where we've basically taken our entire squads up to fight in both of them. As you can see, we are kind of taking on one, no problem, but then Crimson comes in and provides some well-needed support that ends up pushing us away. But in the process, we still end up, maintaining the fight, and that's kind of the whole purpose, right? Maintain the fight up here while the rest of the zombies spawn, and then once those zombies are spawned in the next, 3.5 minutes, the tier 5s can take those and then run away with the cement while we're still distracting them with the fight up north. Now, unfortunately, my troops got killed early, so I kind of got out of it as, unfortunately, a little earlier than I wanted to. But when you're fighting 2 legions, it makes it pretty difficult. Now, we had a little bit of gold there that showed up, but not near as much. As you're going to see, they're going to get pushed off of their target as well. So instead, what we decided to do was retreat, fall back, take our zombie, collect that one, and collect as much cement from that as we could. Do I consider this a win? No, but I do consider it more of a tie, just for the simple fact that we did end up getting the cement off of at least one of them and bringing them back. All thanks to MP5, all thanks to Nom Nom, all thanks to Ollie for being able to bring their stuff back. And Cyberbug, don't get him wrong. Cyberbug was there too from Frew, FREW. Pretty quintessential in the fighting as well. But as you'll see in our situation, we got that and we run with the cement. Now, it is always best to run in a group. It is always best to make sure that your strongest are protecting your cement carriers, because as I mentioned, if you have cement, it makes you travel slower and take more damage. So because that's what we want to try to avoid, we want to make sure that we're protecting that. So travel as a group and make sure that you're, like I said, defending that cement. Now, this is the time, actually, I started looking up north as we were starting to go there. And we looked up north and we saw, just wait, hold on a second. I believe this is where we start to see some, we start to see some footage. MP5 just up on his own up in the north, just wreaking havoc on these guys. Look at all the cement that gets dropped that they ended up having to pick off and pick up. And in the process, he's just focusing those cement carriers because they are taking massive amounts of increased damage and therefore subsequently losing a ton of troops in the process. So just up by himself, just to prove how much of a boss this guy is, takes 5 troops by himself, 5 marches by himself up north, and just wreaks havoc. Unfortunately, he didn't have the support from the rest of us because I didn't know he was going up there. I don't have the troops to, unfortunately, 5 march like that. He didn't come back with cement, but the guy's an absolute machine, just causing havoc everywhere that he can. So we ended up picking up some more cement, bringing it back because, of course, this is right around the time when your scavs are up at the level 6s, level 7s, and because we're 2 o'clock, the level 8. So once you get that cement, bring it back. Cement is super, super important. That's how you build towers in Archipelago Raid, and you need to have that cement being generated consistently every 2 hours at those level 6 and level 7, okay? Now, they start to amass because we want to capture those gates. Now, like I mentioned with these gates, you want to start developing that cement generation. But here's the thing that they don't tell you. The cement generated from those gates is not to every alliance, okay? So it's not like all 7 alliances are generating extra cement. It's only the alliance that ends up capturing the gates or the towers that end up getting the extra cement generation, okay? So we had to be cautious and aware of who we were giving that cement to. We don't want to give extra cement to an alliance that doesn't have full building tech or full burn tech, right? Because if we give them extra cement, they're going to be building weaker towers when what we need is the strongest towers that we can. So just like here, we end up swarming the gate so that GrOp was the ones to capture because we do have full tech and we want to make sure that we're getting as many of those good towers as we can. Now, our decision on day 1 was to basically go straight into Jade and test their metal. We wanted to see what kind of defenses they had, what kind of fighting that they were capable of doing right out of the gate, just because we were kind of aware early on that gold was not nearly as participating as they needed to be. They weren't building out. They weren't fighting as much. They weren't, leading up on the leaderboards by any stretch. So we knew that it was going to be a problem. Here I'm coming back. I ended up stealing a little bit of cement as we're building out. So I ended up getting it past. But we ended up playing a little bit of cat and mouse with these guys. So they would bring their troops to our side. We would fight them back. Then we would go to their side. They would fight us back. So here's a prime example, right? We move into the front area. We start pushing them back. We start putting out the troops in the marches that I can fight with. I'm not sending out my riders in ranged because my riders in ranged are only tier 5, so they're only good for filling rallies and filling garrisons. So I'm only fighting with infantry, but even doing that, guys, I'm still able to amass over 100 million points in the event, and still I'm able to amass, it was 110, I believe, and by the end of it, I was at 110 million might. So I still able to amass that glorious 1-to-1 ratio, which I think everyone should be pushing towards. If you don't know what a 1-to-1 ratio is, it basically just means you want to score the same amount of points as you have might. If you've got 50 million might, you want to score 50 million points. If you've got, like in my case, 120 million might, I'm shooting for between 110 to 120 million points in every event that we participate in. Okay? Now, yes, you can pad your numbers by doing PvP. Most alliances don't allow PvP till the last couple of days, just like in GrOp. You want to be kind of cautious and aware of that. But in the same breath, PvP is also a good way to be able to, like I said, pad your stats, get some of those points when maybe, or maybe if you're not able to fight. I always suggest that you do PvP in the last day or two of the event when most of the fighting is done at that point anyways, and you don't really have much to worry about. But again, cat and mouse, they send squads into us to try to intimidate us from building. We end up pushing them back out and keep building in the process. And making sure that our placement is nice so that we can build lots of towers in or lots of shelters in and defend if we needed to based on them being closer to our side of things. Okay, so just back and forth with some fights. I do notice that I've been starting to play on optimized mode a lot more, just because not only is it a little bit faster, but it's a little bit easier to kind of target troops on the field and things like that. So I've moved a lot more to that. I suggest that you do as well, just because it makes it a little bit, like I said, a little bit easier to control things in the field, to see things in the field, and it makes it a little less laggy in the long term, especially when you have these big skirmishes and big fights like we end up getting to. Now, unfortunately, I do go way back and forth here. I have ADHD, as you guys know. So, unfortunately, there's a lot of clicking and a lot of back and forths and a lot of checking on maps and stuff like that and a lot of checking on other resources that I really have no reason to check on. So it leads to a lot of clicking. So I apologize for that. If you end up getting a seizure from my video, at least message me so I can apologize again. I am Canadian after all. Sorry is part of our dialect. So, so we have that. As you can see, we are struggling. We are out of cement at this point for our alliance, but we do have 7 more. And all we're trying to do is get to that gate and kind of hold them off. Kind of just prove to them that we're not a pushover. We're here to fight. We're here first. And we want to kind of just prove it to them. Now, I will admit, there were a couple of players that really caused some problems for us. And not necessarily caused problems, more like just gave us headaches. One of them is named Peeny. So it's P, capital P, capital Knee, Peeny. And I believe he's from the Alliance DDA. I could be wrong on that, but I believe he's from DDA. And he spent a lot of time harassing farmers, a lot of time hit and running, just a total annoyance. And in my opinion, probably some of the worst style of gameplay. I really hate players that do that. The ones that are, specifically focused on the basics of just like hunting farmers and things like that. They build out the fastest troops that they can just to kind of run, hit and run, hit and run, hit and run. I mean, if you want to play that way, congratulations, but it's, in my opinion, probably the cheapest way to play. And people hate you for it. So just understand that. It was annoying, absolutely. Caused a lot of problems, just a lot of annoyances, so kind of keep that in mind. And, just kind of choose how you want to play. But here's a prime example, guys, carrying 1,000 cement, moving a lot slower. Even my infantry at 875 with my speedy troops are much slower than everybody else. But I'm also being cautious and aware. I don't want to fight them because, we're at that... we're at the 7 we're trying to get by. So what we ended up doing is we ended up putting the 6s in front, the tier 6s in front to engage the fight. And then as you can see with my 875 cement, I'm able to run out and kite behind them. And then we jump through nodes all the way home. If you don't know how to jump through nodes, do yourself a favor and start practicing. It is pretty simple. If you'll notice on the right-hand side by the images of the heroes, there is an all function that is part of your settings. It is in your settings, your customizable settings. An all focus function Get to use it, get used to it. You'll be able to jump through nodes in no time. Okay, but again, we want to take all of that cement, get it home. 875 is nothing to gawk at. It is absolutely something that's important, especially when the towers are cheap right now at 4.9K. We want to be able to build up as many as we can. So, lots of clicking, lots of rewards to catch as we're still continuing to build out, just waiting for the next towers to keep going. End up doing a little bit of healing here in batches. If you don't know about micro healing, folks, it's another fantastic way to get yourself back in the fight. Using the help of your alliance. Okay, so if you didn't know, every member in the alliance can help you with your healing by clicking the help button, which removes time off your healing factor. So if you have a lot of active players or bots, what you can do is activate those so that they're clicking the help button, and you can heal, for example, in 500 troops at a time, which only typically takes about 25 minutes at tier 6, 23, 25 minutes or something like that. And your alliance can, with 5 helps or 6 helps, clear that entire time list for you. So you can mass heal troops, 500 troops at a time. Or if you have a lot of active members or bots, you can heal, if you have 30 active people that are clicking the help button, you can easily run and heal 2,000 troops at a time in a matter of seconds. So you can batch heal 2,000, then 2,000, then 2,000, and keep doing that, and you can have your entire hospital healed within a very short period of time. So if you don't know about batch healing yet, I've just given you your first kind of walkthrough. Start doing your batch healing. Start using it. That way you can be more influential and participate in more fights, because that's really what it's all about, being able to participate in more fights that we can. Okay, so as we're noticing, we are building out to fight them. They are building out to fight us, so we are going to have a little bit of conflict here at the beginning. I have gone and marked both the level 6s so that people understand that cement is available every 2 hours on the hour, and that is quite important. What you'll notice when they chose to build their next tower into us, they chose to build it away from us so that they were not touching. That gave us the ability to build into them instead. Now, this shows that they are scared of us at the moment. So what do? We build a tower inside the area that's touching both of theirs, which allows us to field fight, push them back, harm their troops, and take down 2 of their towers in the process, which wastes their cement. And especially early game, that's a big deal, right? Any cement that we can waste is a win in our books, okay? So we're going to build this up, attack them head on, and make sure that we can obviously defend ourselves in the process. Now, they bring out a little bit more of that field presence, but we've got Nom, we've got MP5, and I believe OnlyFans is here as well. And as you'll see here, there's actually a huge monumental shift that happens when at first we had myself, I believe it was myself that was garrisoned, and then MP5, we switched over to the MP5 garrison, and it was absolutely crazy how the trades just shifted, right? So watch this. As they have the rally coming in, right? They're going to have a rally coming in shortly. I think I put mine in there to start. No, I put somebody else in to start. I'm not actually sure. I can't read it from here. Anyways, we put it in to start, but as soon as MP5 hit the tower, I put him as the garrison lead, and watch these trades just exchange, right? So now we put him in, all of a sudden the trades just go on their heads. Just instantly. Yeah. Flipping trades on their heads, and all of a sudden their rally can't touch us. So this is exactly how influential they were. We were losing until MP5 shows up, and then all of a sudden our trades with the Rigaro Riven, they can't take it down, even with the Julia Bard, right? Now, they wanted to do a lot of field fighting, so we ended up trying as best we could to run the rally so that they didn't have to, but they still ended up partaking in that as well. I mean, being able to, to use and abuse their might when we needed it was an absolute godsend. And being able to, see some of the trades that we were able to get, working together as a team were absolutely phenomenal. Getting some of those triple rallies that were working proper timing was just absolutely what we needed to see. And as you'll see throughout these fights, we were able to kind of be that way consistently. Even though they were attacking us, even though they were sending rallies, you'll see that MP5 garrison is just a monster. I think it's 6.5 million or something like that, 5.5 million. But even taking these rallies, he's just basically just strong arming the whole thing. And then once we get that tower in, we can start running rallies of our own. and then we, again, turn the entire fight on their heads. They may have more field presence at the time, but once we start running rallies in coordination with everything else, you'll see that they're not able to fight. So even in that situation where they've got 3 or 4 rallies that running as consistently, the moment they lose sight of that, the moment that we start running our own rallies, they're not able to fight back. Even though they're pushing us in the field, I give them a ton of credit. Like, these guys didn't stop, even though it was, a pretty big uphill fight for them. Don't get me wrong, there was a lot of hate mail. A lot of, this is unfair. Why is Nom here? Why is HNB here? Lots of that kind of stuff. And I don't blame them. It is the matchmaking that allows us to do this kind of stuff. But in the same breath, we were still matched at 8.5 billion rating. So it's not like these guys came in and were just able to dominate the field. There was still some, like, the fighting was still pretty good, even for them. Even though they're HNB, even though they've got 1 billion kills, even though they've been in the game a long time, like, the matchmaking wasn't as bad as it could have been. So I actually give it a little bit of credit this time. But here we go. We start sending rallies, and we're going to start to see some of these trades go in. And it becomes very, very one-handed. So as we go, more field fighting, keeping that pressure up so that they don't have much to refill from. Then the rallies go in, and we start to see the numbers go down. And once we have the 3 rallies, we've got 1 infantry. And in this situation, I think we had 2 infantry and ranged to start, and then a range coming in afterwards. So we've got the infantry tanking, and we had a great player named Wait For Me, spelled W84ME. And he had a really good Bodala Stella rally that was a great tanking rally, which would allow for the range rallies to come in and hit afterwards. And we had a good one from Slay coming out of Frew, FREW, pardon me. And then obviously Nom and MP5 were outrunning rallies as well. Oli spent a ton of time in the field, helping and support throughout the field. So I give him a ton of credit for that, because I'll be honest, finding field fighters is one of the hardest things to do, because it's one of the most expensive things to do. It takes a lot to be able to do it, because you have to be able to manage 5 different lines individually, which is much worse than what we're trying to deal with ourselves, right? As what we're dealing with, at least for my bracket, is dealing with, as a garrison lead, I'm making sure that I've got a couple of marches that are good for garrison, and then 1 or 2 that I can still use in the field, and then the rest are joining rallies and other garrisons from there, right? So it's a situation where these guys are able to really kind of assert their dominance by having 5 troops in the field, which, not a lot of people can do. So I give them a lot of credit for not only having 5 marches, but using them and utilizing them well too, right? Because it's not just about using them in the field, it's about using them to target the towers properly, to target the teams properly, to swarm rallies properly, a lot of that kind of stuff. And none of that would have happened if it wasn't for the HNB guys. They really kind of helped us with that kind of stuff. And as you'll see, I mean, even Nom himself, swarming rallies and swarming towers by himself, just unreal. Just blows my mind that, people are able to do that. But there it goes. We popped the tower. Now it's in destruction. They're going to try to refill it, and they're going to try to heal it, but we're going to send 4 more rallies, right? Wait For Me is going to send his. We're going to send 2 more. Nom's going to send his. Slay's going to send his. And we're going to join them as quick as we can. Now, they fill up very quickly. And I'm going to obviously make that as a negative. Because when you're trying to get points and you can't get it in field fighting and you have to get it by joining rallies and garrisons, well, it's a bit of a headache when most of what you're getting, you're not going to actually able to get joining, because they fill up so quick. But triple rallies are nice. Obviously, as you can see, these numbers hitting hard. It makes it very, very intimidating for them to be able to defend. However, what this did do is it did kind of split our focus from them having 2 towers. And it did give them the ability to build a 3rd, which we ended up swarming and destroying very quickly. Because they ended up putting a chekc there. Now, if you don't know anything about chekc is a great garrison for a single target. Unfortunately, she doesn't do well in multi-target garrisons, unless you have her statted properly, unless you have her honed properly on her armaments. she doesn't do well in multi-rallies or swarms or things like that. So it's one of those situations where you really want to be careful how you're actually dealing with those things, right? How you're dealing with a chasey. So in a multi-rally garrison, I'm probably going to put Rigaro Riven over that just because they have a lot more of that sustainability in them than I would with a chasey Felix or what have you. But here again, we managed to take down both of those towers. This is kind of where we ended up taking it for the first night, for the first win, just because we didn't want to waste any more cement. We knew that their active time, which was not our active time, they were going to push back into us, and we wouldn't be there to defend. And so we didn't want to waste any more cement going any farther east. And that's kind of what I spend a lot of time in chats going for, is getting people to understand, like, we had a plan going into this. It's a totally off the wall plan, just because we ended up getting, like I said, a legion that didn't do anything. So it made it much harder for us to kind of plan that way. So we had to actually plan to take over the East 6th at the very last day and basically set it up so that we would have a cross-map faction instead. Now, as I mentioned, day 2 here, we're going to get into it. They ended up pushing us back a little bit. So when we logged in, we were a little bit farther behind, starting to build out and kind of just take Jade on a little bit more head on. I ended up healing a lot more in the evening while I slept, so now I'm able to go back in with full squads and take my 3 marches in the field. Now, granted, my 3 marches aren't great, but they are tier 6 and they do the job. So having them is obviously more beneficial than not, which is what we'll end up using them for. Again, MP5 now is the leader of this one. Well, not leader, pardon me. He's the one that's kind of fronting this one with a lot more of his rallies as well. And then we start to see a little bit more of how we're taking that in. So we're joining as many rallies as we can so that we can, in turn, obviously gain points, but hinder them as well. Okay, so now we start to see these rallies come in 3 at a time, and we're talking about a chasey Felix. And this is my prime example. Now we've got 3 on there, and chasey Felix ends up getting melted pretty quickly. They do pretty well to tank against the 1, but once we get 2 additional ones that are on there, even from Little Witch and even from MP5, it makes it, a little bit of a fight at the end. But unfortunately, it's not much that we have to deal with. Right, so we ended up getting it burnt. It starts burning. They repair it. We did have some problems, as you'll see in the second video. We did have some problems in the later stages. They ended up getting some good rallies on us, or some good garrisons on us. But it ends up not being a huge deal in the long run. We pretty much get to do kind of what we want in the pushes. Not to say it was easy by any stretch. It took a lot of coordination, but that's effectively what I spent a lot of my time doing, was spending most of my time in chats kind of coordinating people. I didn't hit my kill goal. I wanted to hit 100 million kills this event, and I didn't get to my 100 million kills this event. I was a little short on that, but still managed with points. So, you win some, you lose some. Take it with a grain of salt, as they say. I don't know what I just said there, but it was obviously funny. I mean, in chat, eating something. I'm not sure. Anyways, as you can see, now we've got a little bit more field pressure than they do. So there's not much they can defend with. But again, this is just based on our active time versus not their active time, right? So we've got Nom Nom in the field here. We've got MP5 running rallies. These guys were, like I mentioned before, and I'll mention again, just absolute machines, absolute monsters. And once you have them, kind of supporting you, pretty much anything can be done. Now we're over on the other side again, planning out the captures on these resources and resource spaces. And there was a little bit of a confusion on how to take towers to ensure that we still get the Crimson faction that we wanted to. But we ended up getting through as best we could after getting some much needed advice from Z, or Zed as I call him because I'm Canadian, in how to get the factions that we wanted. So there is some kind of back and forth, as you'll see in chat here, based on when do we capture the 7, when do we capture the West 6, and all that kind of stuff. And trust me, I do have a much better understanding now how that works. But it also comes from the AI. If you look at the AI help, it was really helpful when it comes to how they make the faction pairings. So it really kind of gave us the idea. Now, here's where we kind of look back and we're like, okay, well, now gold looks like they're about to, push back into them, which would be great if they did. But that petered out pretty quickly when you start to realize that they just got put back to their 7 very quickly after that. So it was, a little flash in the pan, if anything else. A lot of AR, as you'll see, or as you'll come to learn, is diplomacy. There's a lot of chit-chatting that happens. So it's one of those things you have to be consciously aware of. Because you're dealing with, in our situation, 7 alliances per legion, right? So 7, 14, 21, that's 28 alliances. And if you have an alliance with 100 people, that's 2,800 people that you're playing with. Trying to coordinate, almost 3,000 players is a lot. And it takes a lot of time. So anybody who works in diplomacy, anybody who works in, customer service and things like that, like I implore you, it's a lot of work. And I'm not jealous or anything, but I definitely understand the effort. Now here, as you'll see what we got doing, we've got 3 rallies headed towards this guy, and we don't want him to run away. So in order to do that, what we're actually doing is kind of anchoring him in his spot. So if you attack him, he's not able to transfer away. He's not able to relocate away. So you set your rallies, and then you have someone come in and attack him and then run away. And basically enter battle and then leave battle. Then enter battle and leave battle. Because there's a timer at which point they're considered in battle. And this way you can basically keep them pinned in place, preventing them from actually getting away. Right? So we do this a couple of times until the guy wakes up and finally shields. But we got a couple of burns on some of their bigger players, which was nice. We did get some resources. We did get to eat out of it. But truth be told, this AR cost a lot. It was a very expensive event in regards to resources, in regards to speed ups, just to be able to keep up with these guys. We had Nuke there as well, another guy I want to mention. Nuke, Cyberbug, these guys were quintessential in what we tried to do. And absolutely just phenomenal. Even here, if you look at this, MP5 runs out in the process of while we're doing this, comes back with 1,250 cement, and they weren't able to catch up with him because his troops are just so quick, just so fast. Even his ranged was too fast. You know what I'm saying? Which is just a prime example of older accounts with better equipment, right? So this is one of those situations where we finally get pushed in a little bit here, or we finally push them in a little bit, sorry. Get a couple of burns. But again, the whole concept is at this point is to focus towards the future, because we know that gold isn't here. At this point here, we know that gold is non-existent. So our only hope in order to win this, in order to win AR, is to force a faction between us and Crimson across maps. But in order to do that, we need to capture the level 6 on the east side of the map, which is incredibly difficult to do. Right? Even in the situation where gold builds out and then gets pushed back entirely, we know that gold is not going to be there even in the second round. So there's not much we can do except watch. So we have to force a faction with Crimson. But this by its own right is a difficult thing to do because it's a game of towers. If you don't know how the towers work in Archipelago Raid, it's like this. The level 7 is going to, whoever captures the level 7 gets locked to one side or the other, right? So that's going to determine who gets on what side. The other people who capture the level 6s is what's going to determine who gets paired with it. So in our situation, if we capture the left side, we're locked to the left, which means that we will automatically get locked with gold. If we don't capture the 7, instead let Jade or Crimson capture their 7, and then us capture the level 6, we at least have a coin toss to either get paired with Jade in round 2 or get paired with Crimson in phase 2, which is exactly what we want, because that would at least give us 2 legions against 1. Now, granted, it makes it hard because, maybe they don't want to work with us, and maybe they sacrifice the entire game to be able to kill us and help their teammates, their other alliance that they had made previously. But it gives us more of a capability. It does, however, mean that we have to play smart. What I mean by that specifically is it means that we cannot go ahead and burn all of our resources fighting early, building towers into them early, building cement into them early, and then wasting it all. We need to be smart. So this is where we start to look at where we are, contemplate where we want to be, and not waste any more resources in the east. They're going to push us back to the gate, which is totally fine. Because remember, our whole goal is going to be a final push to capture the 6, pardon me, on the east side of the map to force the matching that we want. This is where it gets funky. Unfortunately, if we capture our 6, that has the potential to, or our 6 on the west, that has the potential to locking us to the west as well. So we have to be extra cautious about not capturing the 6 on the west, not capturing the 7 on the west until we are absolutely sure it's not going to influence the matchmaking at all. And this is, as it stands currently, this is currently before I've spoken to Zed, so I'm still a little curious about how things work, but he was able to help me shortly after we ended up doing this after this day. So again, shout out to Zed. Thanks so much for the help. I appreciate you. Keep crushing it, buddy, and I hope things go well with you and your family, okay? Now, I'm clicking around looking. Red's got gold pushed in. They've already canceled out that last attack. We're sitting out here trying to push into Jade. Jade is building extra towers at this point, trying to defend themselves. So they're already worried about us building into their 6, knowing that we're going to be able to. Hence why they start building more towers there. But again, what we're doing is a lot of diplomacy, just getting people understanding that there is a plan. There is a bit of a risk, but at the end of the day, if we don't, it's basically like we've just given up anyways. So passing back and forth, we're looking at the gate coming up here in 14 minutes of gameplay before it unlocks. Looking at Crimson building out towards capturing theirs on the east side. Looking at Jade building out to capture theirs on the east side. Going after some of these... what's it called? Getting ready for the elite scavengers, which are coming up here next in the next 10 minutes because it's almost 2 o'clock UTC. This is a situation where, again, we took the T6s directly into Jade. But the difference was we didn't have Crimson to worry about, so it was just against Jade, and we have been fighting them all day, so it was easier to push them back. And once we had all of our group there, as you can see, it wasn't much for them. It was kind of difficult for them. They had to go basically run away with it. So from here, we end up going back to the other side to capture our, to capture Gold's zombie, because we know that Gold isn't there. But Crimson ends up coming in the top 2. So as you'll see, we end up, and this is just one of the problems when you're dealing with trying to coordinate 2,800 players, or what could be, 700 players on your side. There's just a lot of information that has to get translated, right? So in the process, we're there. We're telling the T5s on the other side to prep for the left side zombie that's going to spawn in a couple of minutes. We know that they've got some of those DDA players that are waiting by our gates to pick us off. They were also hanging by our airport. So they were doing a lot of things that were quite clever in hindering a lot of our growth, like even in this situation. But now we have Crimson coming in. So, it was a situation that really had us kind of on our toes. We had no gold. We just sent Jade back. We couldn't fight Crimson because we had just finished a skirmish. So our best bet is to take the zombies and head on back. So we pop to the east, or the west, pardon me, target our zombies and start running back. MP5 starts moving down to the south zombie. In the process, we capture ours. They all start running. I start running into it. Then I notice all of the lines and I say, nope, cancel that, everybody run. But in the process, everybody doesn't run. And what you see is these people with 2,000 cement coming to fight not only the zombies, but the other players. They're already at a disadvantage. Don't try to take more. Take your cement and run away. Put the freaking pedal to the metal and get out of there. This cost MP5 and I a bunch of troops to be able to distract them, holding them off from attacking. Now, granted, we did end up taking most of the second cement, which is great. So we ended up, in the process, quote unquote, winning the skirmish. But the cost of that, just for following suit and listening and being a little bit more aware of what's happening in chat and stuff like that, just becomes astronomical. We won in this situation, but we very lost everything, right? Everything that we would. Instead, we ended up getting lucky. Now, don't get me wrong. Risk it for the biscuit. That's what they've always said, right? That's one of those classic colloquialisms. But again, it's one of those situations where if you're not aware, you can easily end up giving your opponent cement, which is not something we want to do. We want to be very cautious of. So after that, we spend a lot of time building up towards the 7, building out, talking strategy, making sure that people understand that we're not capturing the 7. We're just building to it to prep for it, getting the cement that we're able to, bringing back the cement that we can, and then obviously fighting out the remaining troops that are there. We start building directly towards the 6 because obviously we want to capture that 6 as well. First capture rewards. Any free rewards that you can get is what you want. I do spend a lot of time placing flags for where the towers should be. Just because I want to try to make it as easy as I can for the tower placers so that they're not putting them in the wrong spot. But there are some times when people put them in the wrong spot and there's nothing I can do to kind of help that. So it's a little bit unfortunate, but just know that I do try my best to make sure that it's as easy for those that are doing that. This is something I wanted to make mention of. That gentleman that I just pulled up there, his name is Fie, F-I-E, just recently passed away. Very well-known player. I want to give a shout out to him as well. Him and the Alliance shot. It's a very, very sad thing to hear. I believe he passed away in his sleep. So RIP and a shout out to Fie from shot. Okay. Now, as we jump back into the action here, I'm just going around the map seeing who's building where. We've got green building out into the 6 a little bit. Ours building out to the 7 where we almost are. Crimson hasn't done much yet on our side, but I also think it's because they've just spent a lot building into gold to push gold back to their gate. So they haven't really had the capability or the need to build out yet. There's really no pressure for them. They can kind of do it at their leisure, whereas we're kind of under a time crunch. So we end up building, and then we're going to move into day 3. Now, day 3 is a lot to do with the chainsaw zombies, which is what we're jumping into the action on here. And remember, this is a brutal situation because, truth be told, it's technically 2v1. Gold isn't here to catch theirs. We only have jade, and we only have crimson. So we start off on the north end of the chainsaws, capturing as many from crimson as we can. Because ideally, from here, what we want to do is capture as many from the opponents. Crimson is still our enemy at this time, and Jade had a much bigger force. Crimson didn't bring near as many to chainsaws, so we're going to take it from Crimson this time. Now, I know it's kind of counterproductive since we want to kind of merge with Crimson, but this is one of those situations where we really want to get as best we can and as many of those points. If you don't know about chainsaws, it allows you a buff after the 3rd day, which provides squad attack and squad damage, and some bonus rewards as well. The only problem is you have to be on par with them. You have to work as a team. You got to focus as a team. And as you can see, even here, we want to move as a team. We cut off Crimson. We start to take the fight into Crimson, push them back entirely away from our zombies, just because we obviously want to get as many of those chainsaws as we can. Now, why am I pushing as hard as I am, knowing that my troops aren't near as good? Well, because it's Nom, and I can't not. You know what I mean? I can't not sacrifice the troops with the squads. It's fun to do. So that's what we end up doing. We end up pushing them back here, distracting them a lot as the rest of them are taking on chainsaws and focusing on the targets, which is ideally what you should be doing, right? You'd have your tier 6 focusing on fighting, your tier 5s focusing on the zombies so that you can get those taken down. Now, if you're in the lower brackets, you can go ahead and kite your zombies back to your areas to be able to do them that way. But that's a whole different time for another different video. Other than that, folks, that is it for day 1, 2, and 3 of this event. If you like what you saw, go ahead and hit the like, subscribe, and follow button. Love, peace, chicken grease, and until next time, stay lifted.